Okay, folks, thank you very, very much. We're just trying to bring a bit of energy to the room once again after our lunch. Sometimes with a bit of a post-lunch slump, and we're just trying to pick it up again with the auction. What the auction was all about was prioritization. It was about communicating under pressure. It was having the courage to stand up for what priorities you feel are first and foremost important. But let's go back into talking about the strategy. Let's talk about the strategy, folks, for 15 minutes before we go into our rotational or workshops. I'm a huge believer in an organisation having vision, having strategy, having a North Star, having a direction of travel of which they want to go. And the strategy that we've spoke about today, we briefly touched on it in the workshop. It's a bit like a map. It's a bit like an ordnance survey map. Here's the route we're going to take, and here's the equipment we believe we're going to need to get to the top of that mountain peak to see our North Star. The reality is, once we enter the arena of the marketplace, once we go into contention with moving parts and global politics and the economy, so much happens outside of our control. And strategy without action and strategy without resilience is a bit like arriving at Slieve Donard Car Park with a map of the Mourne Mountains and wondering why the earth isn't flat. The reality is this organisation is going to have to navigate so many ups and downs over the next 3, 5, 10 years and beyond. Now, with an organisation of this scale, there's going to be some high peaks, but with every high peak, there can be low valleys. And this is where resilience comes into play. Because it's not about reaching peak by peak by peak, because if that was the case, every single organisation would be very, very successful. It's about navigating the lows as well. It's about pulling each other out of the lows, because change is ever-present and omnipresent. So the road ahead, even with a very clear and concise strategy, it doesn't allow for the fact that there's still going to be ups and downs. How do we navigate through that? And I suppose it shines a light on the importance of the journey as opposed to the destination. It's about how we as a team navigate the journey day by day with this strategy, week by week, our monthly meetings, our quarterly meetups. It's about having this map as a guide so that the journey becomes better, so that we're all hiking in the same direction up the mountaintop. In sports psychology, there's a great quote which I love, which is, "The man at the top of the mountain didn't get there by chance." Henderson Food Service is in a fantastic place. It's in a great place, of course it is. It's at the top of its current mountain. But when it comes to performance and mindset, what got us here isn't guaranteed to get us there. Where we want to go over the next 10 years, there's ups and downs and peaks and valleys in between that. Hence the importance for days like this, conversations, feedback, resilience, well-being, all the soft skills that we've spoke about. Capacity, the right people on the seats, the right equipment, all of this must be taken into account. Because what that journey consists of is constant change. And change oftentimes isn't easy. So change can be full of opportunity, it can be full of energy, but it can also be difficult. So what we need to do off the back of today is, first and foremost, to understand this strategy, but how do we articulate it to our team? And how do we articulate it to our team that all of a sudden thinks we're being asked to do more with less? Some people don't see change as an opportunity, and the reason they don't see it as an opportunity is because they can't see beyond the messy part. They can't see beyond the chaos. They are stuck in that caterpillar mode, and they can't see that through change a butterfly exists. Now, when you look at the science of that metamorphosis or that transformation of the caterpillar to a butterfly, it's brutal at times. When it goes into its cocoon, it breaks down, it loses who it once was, but what exists now is something much better, much bigger, much more unique. Now, people in a certain leadership position know that, and they're willing to navigate the ups and downs because they know at the end of it, the strategy comes into life. But it's to bear that in mind that sometimes there's resistance to change. We feel that as leaders, our team give it in the form of feedback and resistance, but it's knowing that the North Star should guide us through the ups and downs, the dark times, the turmoil, the frustration, the awkward conversations, the lack of knowing. All of these must come into play as well. I suppose our job as leaders within this organisation is communication. There is a word for leader that can be traced back to kind of North European area at one point, which loosely translates to the expression pathfinder. I love that. I love that terminology to explain leadership. We are the pathfinder. And if we go back to this slide as an organization that's navigating mountains and peaks and valleys, the pathfinder or the leader's role was to walk that path. But bearing in mind, going back in those days, there was no technology, there was no GPS. We were navigating the mountains at night using the North Star to guide us. Now, what happens in some organizations is the leader has the strategy. The leader has the vision. And they start to walk that journey up and down and across the Mourne Mountains at night. And they make assumptions that everyone behind them can see what they can see. Everyone behind them can feel what they can feel. Everyone behind them has the same mindset as they have. And it's our assumptions that often trip us up along that journey. Again, hence the importance of open conversations. One of the workshops after lunch, we're going to talk about how we negate that. How do we negate the Chinese whispers down the line? How do we negate the assumptions that everyone can see what we can see, everyone can feel what we can feel as a leadership? But communication has never been more important. Arguably, your only role as a leader is to constantly, on a daily basis, communicate the strategy. Every action we and your team do should align with the North Star of a strategy. The strategy and the vision should embed itself in the decisions that we make as teams on a day and weekly basis. How do we revisit the vision and the strategy day on day after today? Otherwise, we lose sight of it. Otherwise, we can only see 3 feet in front of us with the flame. Our assumptions as leaders is what strips us up. So we must challenge them. We must sit around often and have conversations like this. Thankfully, there's been studies on how do we go about it, how to scaling companies and companies scaling at speed have these conversations. And there's many different studies on this, and one of the most prominent and famous ones is a study by Google. It's called Project Aristotle. And what they wanted to do is they studied different sports teams, they studied big tech companies in the States, Fortune 500 companies, PLCs. And essentially, Project Aristotle wanted to come up with a blueprint for high performance and success. Is there a framework for success that if an organization was to follow that framework and process, they could scale? What Project Aristotle discovered through the millions of dollars spent, there is a bit of a pyramid. And it was got very little to do with processes and very little to do with frameworks. It had everything to do with people. If you can get people within an organization rowing in the same direction, that boat will go faster, it will go in one direction, and it will scale at speed. But that's the top of the pyramid. In order to get everyone to row in the same direction, Project Aristotle said that every single person within the boat must feel seen, heard, valued, and understood. They must feel as if they are a piece of the bigger jigsaw piece or the bigger jigsaw puzzle. Everyone within an organization must feel as if they belong to something bigger than themselves. They must have psychological safety. They must be allowed to be authentic, even to show vulnerability, to be able to say, I don't understand that, I'm stressed, that's went over my head, or I need help. Project Aristotle said that everyone within that boat must feel as if they belong in that seat. Now, going back to vision and articulating that, Project Aristotle said that when you have people feeling accepted, that they belong in that seat, they want to contribute. If I'm part of your journey, if I'm a jigsaw piece in your greater puzzle of this strategy, I want to feel as if my piece fits in and it belongs. But I also want to contribute. Project Aristotle argued that when humans feel accepted, they will contribute. They will go above and beyond for you, for your vision, for your strategy. However, there was a caveat to that. Project Aristotle argued that they must know what the vision is. They must have clarity. They must know the purpose. They must know the vision. They must know the values. They must know that their contribution counts. They must know that there's a ripple effect. If I row here, it gets us there. If I contribute here, it adds value there. I feel accepted. I'll go above and beyond for you, but there has to be a ripple effect of that. How do we have those conversations? I believe it's in tables like this. I believe it's in circles like this. Some of the feedback today has been golden. Some of the challenges, some of the questions, some of the statements in that I still don't understand that pillar, or I don't understand my road here. Here's what I would change. Here's where I foresee a lock. Here's where I believe it slows down. Here's friction. Here's how I would change it. We need the capacity as an organization to show up as ourselves, knowing we only know a little, But when we're all sitting like that together in a circle, giving our viewpoints, learning from each other, then we can see the full picture. And it's a bit like the guy navigating the mountains with one torch. Only that department can see. When we come together, monthly, weekly, quarterly, whatever it may be, and share what we can all see, then we all see the bigger picture of change. Change can feel overwhelming. That word came up a couple of times today, frustrating and overwhelming, going too fast. When we scale at speed, we feel as if we're treading water. We're thinking, when does this stop? I just need a bit of safety. We feel constantly in a state of stretch, and I want to show you what that look and feels like when we're in a state of stretch. I've worked with several Olympic athletes, from swimmers to boxers to runners. I've worked with a couple of professional athletes as well, and we talk about the 1% rule. 1% of your day is 14.4 minutes. So if you work with an Olympic athlete, they have a 4-year vision, they have a 4-year strategy. But speaking to somebody at that level and you're saying, I need you to be faster, I need you to be stronger, bearing in mind they've maybe trained up until that point for 20 years, it can be overwhelming. So what we talk about is the 1% rule. Can you give me 15 minutes per day of a stretch? Can you do more? Whatever that is. It could be recovery, it could be one meal, it could be one conversation, it could be one extra session with the physio, it could be an extra half an hour in bed, it could be up early, whatever it may be. But I want to show you the importance of why small incremental changes with your strategy day by day, week by week, is better than going all in and just getting completely overwhelmed within the first quarter. What I want you to do, just to symbolize this, I want you to stand up for me if you can. So I know we're just after lunch, but if you could stand up for me. So what I've done today, I've asked you to take action. We have been sitting in our comfort zone. Our nervous system's regulated. We feel good. We're just after lunch. We feel that sense of psychological safety. And I have taken you to the first vertical line. You've taken action, but I want more. I know that every single person in this room is capable of more. I know that we are capable of achieving this strategy. So what I want you to do is stretch. And we're going to symbolically stretch. So first of all, I want you just to go up on the balls of your toes and keep it up there as high as you can, just so you start to feel the tweak in your calf muscles. And then stretch up as high as you can. So see who can stay up on their toes and stretch as high as they can. And we're going to hold this for 14.4 minutes. I'm joking. Please sit down for me. Sit down. So if I had have said we're going to hold that for 14.4 minutes, I would have been kicked down to the governor's office, bars put across the door, and I wouldn't have got home tonight. The reason I wouldn't have got home is you all would have associated growth with pain. When we're stretching too much and we don't feel supported during the stretch, we start to associate it with pain. We then start to resent the people in the team that give us that information. And this is what happens in high-performing teams. When we stretch too much, when we're in a constant state of stretch, we feel unsupported. We start to feel pain in our calves. We start to feel uncomfortable because we haven't had a rest. And we start to associate our scaling journey with pain. Hence the importance of incremental changes of pushing, but also knowing when to pull back. Of overseeing a big task, a big project, but knowing when to debrief and knowing when to integrate it into our systems. All we're talking about today is about planting seeds. Strategy, for me, is a living, breathing organism. We have to revisit this every day. There's nearly 60 people in this room today, and if we, over the next quarter, to the end of March, revisit this often, nourish it, give it attention, have conversations around it, give it energy, give each pillar the time, attention it deserves, then what will grow from those seeds are plants way beyond what the strategy outlines. And what we have for that is a successful team, a team that gets back to the next mountaintop, a team that achieves its financial targets, its marketing targets, its retention targets, its people targets, its acquisition targets. This mountain may not be as big as the mountain to come, but together we can navigate it, and hence the importance of teams coming together on days like this, resilience and performance.